Hello and welcome to ACM's Vault of Cult. This is the first episode of 2023. It's our third year doing it now. Thanks a lot for everyone who's listened. All the guests who's joined, we've spoken about some awesome films. Mostly we've done films selected by me. My name's Andy. I'm in my early 40s and grew up loving movies, and we discuss films that I grew up loving that maybe flopped or didn't do so well critically, that I think are and should be known as classics, or at least cult classics. Some are kind of, some aren't, some are just forgotten. But I'm going to throw it on its head again. We've done it once or twice before, but for the foreseeable future it'll be movies other people grew up loving, people I know, and that I haven't seen, and so I can give fresh eyes to these movies, mainly 80s and 90s. We might dip into the 70s or very early 2000s, but mainly from those two decades that I missed, and someone will be a big fan of them. Once again, it'd be films that weren't massive, not big blockbuster hits, but possibly cult favourites, but mainly ones that got bad reviews or bombed at the box office. Starting with this 1985's Explorers, directed by Dante, the first movie done after the massive hit Gremlins. He's actually one of my favourite directors. I don't know why I haven't seen this movie. I really don't. Passed me by for so many years, and I watched it literally just before recording the podcast with a friend of mine, Ian Pointer, who is a local illustrator artist. Talks about how you can look at his work on the podcast as Ian Pointer, and really good to have someone new on the podcast, someone who I've known a couple of years now, and basically whenever I see him we do talk about movies, so this is great. He's got different tastes to me, so really interesting. I will say I did enjoy the movie. I'm not going to pretend I didn't, but we have a lot to say about it, so I'll get on with it right away. I'm just going to play the trailer. I could only really find a half decent quality of the teaser trailer, but you'll get the gist, you'll get the vibe of the movie from that, and then straight on to the chat with Ian.
Hey, watch what you're doing. Shh, pass me the pillow set. Don't like that. You need the ratchet here. I can't do anything with your hand in the way. It's stuck. Give me the... Here. Ouch! What? Shh. Be quiet, man. If you bang like that, your mom's gonna wonder what we're doing. Get this thing loose. Everyone's gonna wonder what we're doing. There. I think that's it. Yeah. Switch on the computer. Ready? Here goes.
From the director of Gremlins, Explorers from Paramount Pictures. The adventure begins in your own backyard.
Ian, thanks very much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.
Is this your first time on any podcast? Or
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so nothing to be nervous about.
Oh, well, no. No, I mean, I've done plenty of, with my job and stuff, I have to do a lot of presentations and things, but when it's my own interest, no, this is the first time. So.
Okay, cool. You're an artist illustrator, yeah?
I am, yes. Yeah, I do a lot of, more in my spare time now. But I do a lot of sort of illustration of just things regarding life and the absurdities and things like that. I do a lot of cartoon portraits of people and things, but I just generally creative, to be honest. I just like the creative environment, and that's why I get into films so much. Is films, animations. Although I haven't seen many animations lately, but I just have a real sort of love for the original sort of 1980s films that I grew up with. Do you know what I mean? So it's I do a lot of art inspired by the things that I'm interested in. So my portfolio kind of has a lot of influence from those things that I like. So But yeah, so that's kind of the background. I mean, I'm more in sort of the software engineering side of things, because that's where, that's where career takes me. But I'll always be an artist and illustrator.
Excellent. Have you got a website or anything that you can...
I have got a website that actually it's probably better on the Instagram, which is Ian Draws Things on Instagram, and then you can follow me and see the sort of things that I do. I need to update it with a few things, but yeah, that's
the best place to find.
Yeah.
So you said 80s influence. Now, this movie released in 1985. Looking at it though, I think it may have come out later in the UK, but we'll talk about the initial release in 85 in America. The Explorers, or just Explorers, isn't it?
I actually thought I remembered it being The Explorers, but apparently when I've been watching it, it is just called Explorers.
Explorers, yeah, yes. That's one thing that...
Because I think there's a Disney that's actually called The Explorers, but, and I think that's where I automatically thought it was the Disney one. It's not.
Yeah. So for people that haven't heard the podcast before, normally I pick a film that I grew up watching and show it to someone else who hasn't, to see whether it's nostalgia clouded me or if it's a good film and what a newcomer comes to it. Now, we're doing this in reverse. You grew up watching this film. I'd never seen it, believe it or not. I don't know how I'd never seen this one. But when do you remember when you first saw it and how you first saw it?
Oh, well, actually, I didn't see it right at the time it was released. It wasn't until the 90s. I remember I was at home, and my sister, we were all into TV. She was scrolling through the before, just going through the channels, and she said, "Oh, the Explorers is on next. That's that film that's like Flight of the Navigator." I went, "Oh, I want to see that. I want to see that." And I watched it. We watched it, and there were certain elements of it that really left an impression on me, and they still influence me in my ideas today. There's a lot to say about the general sort of way it's been done. I mean, on researching, it's suffered from timeline release and things like that, but generally it's a really good release. And I watched it like every Saturday, and certain bits of it, I just enjoyed that. It's that kind of childhood adventure that you can go through that, So,
how old would you have been when you first saw it?
I would have said I'd probably been about 11.
Yeah, so
11, 12. It would have been the age where I could have understood it properly, because, like you say, it came out in 85, 86. I don't recall a cinema release, but then I would have been too young. But it was, so I think that was a good age to really absorb what the sort of concept was and what the information.
Yeah, I mean, this was one I definitely remember seeing the video cover of. It was around the same time you mentioned Flight of the Navigator. There's that sort of era of films. Flight of the Navigator reminded me of. This is the artwork before I see it. Battery's not included. And Spielberg. And Spielberg is a massive influence. One criticism of it is this was called a bit of a Spielberg rip-off. But it's Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins before this, the year before, which was produced by Spielberg.
Yes.
So I sort of see it as come from the same thing. Spielberg would have been producing the likes of Goonies and Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, I mean, this movie, it fits perfectly into the podcast because we talk about films that weren't necessarily big hits, or at least critically or commercially. This done okay critically, but it cost $25 million to make, and do you know how much it made?
No, I don't actually.
It cost $29 million and made just over $9 million. So it was a massive flop. Released only 9 days apart from Back to the Future, which
probably overshadowed
it a lot. Back to the Future, even though it's pushed, I think Back to the Future done it even better than they thought it would. And back then, it wasn't like now where a film would probably only be at the cinema a matter of a month or whatever, and then it was, you put a film out in the summer, it was out all summer. And sometimes a film dominated, and in 1985 Back to the Future did. And also, another thing that overshadowed this, it was released at the cinema the day before Live Aid. So that weekend, not many people would have probably been to the cinema.
It's all about timing.
I'm not fishing up excuses for it.
No.
But often when a film bombs, you have to look at other things.
I think there was also what I read was that he was suddenly told, and he was only like 75% way through, and they said we're releasing it like next week, and he's like, we've got to suddenly finish it. So he didn't have the time to get the.
He said he didn't properly edit it.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have to say, firstly, I did really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But after reading it, I could tell.
Yes.
There's certain parts of it, and even, I mean, I will say now, we will, not that there's much to spoil in this, but we're not going to hold back. We will talk about the plot and that sort of thing. I felt the ending didn't quite click with me, plot-wise. But it feels like there's all these ideas, and it's getting them together and rounding it off. Yeah. And that's, for me, the only thing that really failed for the film was that. But should we try to quickly, if you can, I mean, you've seen this a lot more than me, summarise the plot.
Well, generally, I mean, we've been, we're more familiar with the sort of template for 1980s sci-fi coming of age films now, especially with the likes of like Stranger Things and the way that's come on. You kind of have the first bit where you have these geeks who are being sort of bullied at school, and they make a discovery that enables them to see something that other people don't. And there's a bit of Tron aspect in there as well, where this child who's Ben, who's played by Ethan Hawke, who's fantastic, by the way. I thought he was excellent in that. He has a dream, and this is right in the first scene. He has a dream where he's flying across this sort of circuit board, which is sort of mimicking his hometown, where you see, all these lights and everything. You don't know whether he's really imagining it or not, but there's a message within it, and he doesn't understand it. But his friend Wolfgang, who is played by River Phoenix, he understands what the message means, so he actually puts it into his computer, which I think was a Commodore or something, and he put it together.
I think it might be a Spectrum. They said at one point they said 128K.
He said
which is what a Spectrum was, and I don't think they say, but that's where my brain went.
I think Spectrum. The implication was that, yeah. And this guy's really good, and I was really impressed with on the rewatch, because I haven't seen it for well over a decade. On the rewatch, that there's a lot of scientific. Not facts, but validity within it. Yeah. When he mentions that there's what they realise they can do is create this sort of spheric environment that is untethered by the elements, basically. So anything within that sort of sphere is not subject to gravity and whatnot. So it has its own environment, and the way that they sort of explain it, and what really struck me as a young kid is just this idea that you can make this kind of sphere, and you can put anything in it, and you can go at any speed, and it won't affect anything that's in it, and it just really sort of like fascinated me. So the idea of this is that they create that, and they think, well, what can we do with this? I mean, so they went up to the hill and they started it, and one of the, Wolfgang then suddenly appears in this sphere and starts whizzing around and going underground, and nothing can stop this. Nothing can stop this sphere. It's just resilient and just goes straight through everything. And then they think, well, we can make a spaceship out of this, and they sort of. They go to a scrapyard, which is one of the dad's sort of working environment, I believe, and they get all the elements to make this spaceship, so that they can then make the sphere appear around the spaceship, so that they can just go anywhere and test it out. And that, certainly up until then, that was a really, really good sort of thing to explore. And I think the idea of it was that they would use that to explore the universe and really test the limits of this, and it's that, like I say, it's that coming of age sort of film. And as the story goes on, they realise that there's something else towards this code that they've been able to understand from his dreams. So from that code, there's a feed that's coming from outer space. So they understand that what's actually been happening. They've been getting messages from outer space, which is probably why there's a lot of War of the Worlds references in that as well. There's a first scene where it's that's in the background while he's sleeping. He's clearly
he's fallen asleep to that.
So you think that that's what's influenced his dream, but that kind of bridges the connection, maybe, you know. So he has that idea, you know, of exploring, and it turns out that the actual sort of what do we say, that the plans for creating this, like the ingredients, if you like, this sphere, came from that vessel out in space. And on their second attempt to their second sort of visit within this sphere, they get pulled into this spaceship out in space. They're able to travel because there's no inertia with this sphere, so they can go at any speed they want, or any speed that, you know, is needed. So they end up in this spaceship, and then there's these beings there, just two beings, a male and a female, who are simulating what they've heard from radio signals and TV signals, and that's what they think humans are like, so they communicate in that way. And this is where it could have gone so much more in depth, but it's summarized by things like, you know, doing game show narration and things like that, and that's how they communicate. And I'm going to spoil it if anyone's going to watch it, but
spoilers are allowed.
Spoilers are allowed. That's fine. So what happens is, and this is kind of mirrored in what I've seen in like Star Trek and many other things, is that those beings are actually children who have essentially stolen their dad's car, gone into this vessel, and just were interested in planet Earth and just thought they'd find out what's going on, and then. Towards the end, the dad turns up, and he's clear. You don't understand a word he's saying. He's speaking in their language, but he's clearly very annoyed. And it's lovely, because then it makes it seem that there's not actually much difference between you and the Earthlings. It's like you're both kids.
That is
and stuff.
Straight out of a '60s episode of Star Trek, isn't it?
It is. I believe it is. I can't think which one.
And I know it was definitely spoofed in Futurama.
Yes, it was.
It was done in that. But you got to think with this. Bar Star Trek, this was the first time that sort of twist, so to speak, had been done, that I can think of. I kind of saw it coming, but didn't. You know what I mean? But a lot of I just had a quick look on Letterboxd, where anyone can review it, and a lot of people are saying they really like the beginning of the film and not the end. But by the end, I think they basically mean the first half. But when it goes into, you see, it does feel like a different film to me. It feels like it's gone from the Spielberg-esque family E.T. style movie into something a bit sillier. But that kind of, I think that's what he's trying for, because Gremlins is a bit like that. The first half is one thing, then when they change into the Gremlins and it goes mad, it is a sillier film. And I think that's what he's trying to do, but more on a kiddie level than a horror level. I do like those bits, and also I do kind of think that's what makes the film different. It changes, and if it had stayed the same tone, it would have it might not have got the cult following it's got, because it's that weirdness. Some of the bits are quite funny, and the two aliens are pretty good, I think. Once you get what's happening, there is that few minutes of what the hell is this.
It's quite hammy and unexpected when they sort of get there, but I mean, some of the reason, you know, that it kind of feels different towards the end, it might be down to the sort of slightly to the express release demand date that they had for whatever reason. But in principle, I think it's a great concept. And the idea, I mean, you get all the idea of having these messages coming from outer space. You know, you got contact, that's fantastic. But you know, that idea of getting those messages and then being given just the opportunity to go and meet these other beings was a great idea, and it did get a bit lost, but I don't think it was a disaster as far as a film is concerned.
Exactly, and you've got to think as well. One thing I was thinking all the way through this is I do wish I'd seen it when I was young, because it's made for kids, but it's from the kids' point of view. So that ending with those aliens, 10-year-olds would love that.
Yeah.
You know, and I enjoyed it. But if I'd have watched it the age you did, I'd be the other side of this interview talking to somebody else about how much I liked it.
Yeah.
And also I loved the style of puppets and stuff they used. I think they were kind of cool. You could tell they were puppets, obviously, but it's very 80s. It looked good, and if it was done now with CGI, a lot of the heart of it would be lost.
Yes.
So I really liked that. And also I think for someone young to come straight into this film, they wouldn't get a lot of the references. Well, the things the aliens were talking about, but also the references. This is so Joe Dante, a director I really love, and this is another reason I can't believe I haven't seen it. Not just War of the Worlds, but there's so many references to monster movies, sci-fi movies, B movies. That's kind of what he does. Even to this day, recently, a few years ago, he'd done a few episodes of Legends of Tomorrow, the DC show, but they were episodes set around sort of werewolves and that sort of thing. So it obviously got him in, because that's what he's good at. I mean, his first film was Piranha. Was it Piranha?
Was it Piranha?
Piranha. First film was Piranha, because James Cameron done the second Piranha, and then after that he done The Howling, which iconic. Another film that was overshadowed by something else. I think it was overshadowed by American Werewolf in London. But he's the guy who I think he's brilliant at mixing horror, especially B-movie style horror and comedy. And I think, because looking into it, another director was intended for this film. The guy, is it Wolfgang Peterson? Is it Patterson? Who done Neverending Story? Who died recently. He was originally meant to direct this.
I could have seen that, yeah.
But I think it'd have been a different film, and you wouldn't have had so many B-movie references and that sort of thing. And also, I imagine he didn't do it because only a year before he'd done another Neverending Story, and if you look at his career, he directed so many different films that I think it was too similar.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, what you were saying about the sort of the suit, the aliens sort of being in those sort of suits. It was not in the suits, but the humans playing aliens in those suits was just lovely, and it just thought, why go extra sci-fi on that? You know, it's just and what you were saying about the from the child's perspective, it's like if the child was if Ben was telling the story, then that's how he would have seen what he saw. He would have seen these big beings and had all that, and it's the childlike view of it. And I just love the coming of age aspect of the whole thing, really.
And so about the child's point of view, there's very few adults in it, and the adults you do see are very just they're the parents, they're the teachers. I think I've only seen the first few seasons of it, but Stranger Things is very like that.
It is. It is very like that.
And it almost like with this more so, like the adults are almost like, you know, when you see an adult in Charlie Brown, I know you just hear like a weird sort of. It's they're just there. They're just there because they need to put it in the real world.
Yes.
So there are adults, but there's no need for them.
And the children don't really relate to the adults. That's the thing. I mean, you've got James Cromwell who played one of the
he was the dad.
Yeah. And it's kind of they intentionally made their accent. I know that they were supposed to be. I can't remember whether they were Norwegian or Swedish. I have to rewatch it. But the idea is that they were aliens to them, and it was like they identified more with the actual aliens than their own parents, and they couldn't relate to their parents. So I think all of those messages would probably, if they had more time, would probably have come across.
Another thing Dante said, the original first put together cut of it was 3.25 hours, which I feel the film was perfectly long enough.
Yeah.
But the editing wasn't right.
I think it's because of the editing. I think we wouldn't have wanted the way it's edited now to be 3.5 hours, but if it was done in a particular way, it probably would have been okay. I mean, in modern day one, it would have been a 3-part episode. Or,
it would have been a mini-series.
It would have been a mini-series.
Yeah. But nothing with the aliens. The male alien was Robert Picardo, who was in. He's in a few other Dante films. He's in Inner Space. He's the cowboy in Inner Space.
Oh, yes, yes. I thought I recognised his voice. Yeah,
and he's in Matinee as well. Star Trek. He's in a lot of the Star Trek series.
Yes, he plays the Doctor. I think. Yeah.
But apparently, he was also, a scene I really liked when they're first flying when it's a spaceship.
Yeah. By
the drive-in, and there's a really cheesy sci-fi film on called Star Killer.
Yeah, was that real?
No, because it was him played Starkiller as well. And what that was they were spoofing the sort of Italian rip-offs of Star Wars what were out at the same time. So they'd basically copied some scenes from these other films and made them a bit naff for the sake of comedy.
Yeah.
But interestingly, it was called Starkiller, and that was what Skywalker's surname was meant to be in the film originally. But they changed it for obvious reasons, I think, because Starkiller sounds like a villain. So up until pretty much shooting, it was going to be Luke Starkiller.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
nerdy research gone in there. But I like little things like that. I like the nods to other things, which like Star Wars then would only have just sort of finished. Empire came out. Return of the Jedi was 82, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it wasn't that long after. It wasn't like now. It wasn't this.
There would still be this echo of the
Yeah. And I like that. It's like if you watch, is it Poltergeist, the Spielberg one? There's all Spielberg produced Poltergeist. I'm sure like the kids have all got like Star Wars duvets on, and because all these directors knew each other. They were all kind of they Spielberg and Dante worked together again a year later on the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah.
Which is kind of forgotten now because of the tragedy behind it.
Yeah.
But it's almost like this little world of I love the opening sequence, which we touched on, but it's Jerry Goldsmith's music, which if you're not going to get John Williams, he's as good, I think, in many ways. He done the music to Gremlins, Star Trek. There's all these little connections where you can see where the influences come from. But the way it starts, it opens over the town and it goes into that's more or less a sci-fi version of how, say, Poltergeist starts, how I believe E.T. It's a bit like that to start. As soon as it started, it did say Paramount when I expected it to be the little ET flying over logo. But straight away I was like, right, I'm in one of these films. Boom. Another one that's been compared to, which was also Spielberg produces, to Goonies. I reckon that's just because there's a group of kids.
Yeah,
I've heard people call this the Goonies in space. I thought the kids in there, the Goonies, great cast, but there's a lot of kids in that. There's about 4 or 5 of them. In this, there's 3 main ones, and they're not all shouting at each other. It's not as chaotic. It's easier to watch. And I thought the 3 kids were great. One of them, his career sort of disappeared. I can't think of the name of the character. He came into
that was the new friend. He played Darren, but
Darren. Who he was in Gremlins 2, I know that. But his career sort of faded out. The last thing he done was in 1997. Jason Preston, his name is. Jason Preston. He had 20 credits though, but he stopped acting. That's what I wanted to say. Mainly TV stuff. And the girl in it. Is it Laurie?
The love interest.
The love interest, who sort of became part of the group right at the very end, and she had a dream to come and get them.
That kind of led into a sequel, in my opinion. But it didn't.
That's what they... played by Amanda Patterson, who... She actually died in 2015. I think it was drug-related. Right. I remember it happening because she was in the movie Can't Buy Me Love, like a teen comedy, which was pretty big in 87. One I hadn't seen till literally a few years ago. So if you was to look that film up, you'd recognise the poster, the imagery.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a John Hughes-esque romantic comedy, which was good. And that film done pretty well, especially in America. And then I think addictions and stuff took over, and
Yeah.
tragically. Because if you look at the four main kids, there's only two of them still with us. We don't have to go into what happened to River Phoenix, but as young as he is in this, he only died 8 years later.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
he did so much in that time.
And this character he played, at first I found him a little annoying, then I warmed to him. You know what I mean? He's supposed to be, he's that nerd.
I think it was. I think there was the right ingredients. I think you were supposed to be like, oh no, here we go, the geekiness, you know.
Yeah.
But actually, and that was another thing that I just sort of leading on to something else now. It's just that not accuracy, but the relevance of the science that they mentioned. Like when they were being pulled into space, and then he decided, right, I'm going to let gravity do the job. So he turned off the sphere, and then it plummeted to the ground, and then he turned it back on, but bigger. And he said, I've managed to get more oxygen by making it bigger. And it's like, you get it. You actually get the science here. It's not just a case of like, just turning it on again. You've actually said it's bigger, so I've given us more oxygen so we can travel. So it's like that discovery that they're doing. But yeah, I ended up really liking him, but he didn't have much to do at the end.
He was enjoying himself when they sort of befriended the aliens.
Oh yeah, he was getting on well with it.
Yeah, that. Yeah. This is a thing. I will do this now, just what I think, because this film's approaching 40 years old, still a U certificate. Is there anything in it that you don't think they'd do nowadays? You got to think, because there's one little thing I can mention.
What do you think?
When they're first in the sphere, they decide to be sort of peeping toms to the girl. I think it's all perfectly innocent. It's all kind of, but there is that looking through the window at her, and jokes about is she getting undressed. The same thing happens in the movie Monster Squad, which was kind of but that is a 15, that one, and I don't know, PG-13 in America, I'm guessing. I just don't think you'd do that now.
No, and there's another thing as well. Darren came along with bottles of beer. I know they weren't actually drinking them, but he turned up with these bottles of beer and said, "Oh yeah, my dad says these are really nice." So like,
I didn't pick up on that.
They did, yeah. These bottles of beer. In all fairness, they didn't actually drink them on screen. They just kind of pretended, and then he tried to say, "I christened this I can't remember the name of the spaceship that they." And then he went to smack it, and it wouldn't smash, and it was like quite funny that he was trying to smash it. But they were bottles of beer. But you wouldn't get that.
Yeah.
Certainly not for that. I mean, you wouldn't get that in Stranger Things. You know, you wouldn't get that kind of reference to an alcoholic beverage for an underage program. But that's okay. But that's just the sign of the times. I mean, it's I mean,
and also I do think now that just because of the way of the world now, you'd have probably had in the initial 3 characters a female would have gone with them.
Yes,
but they're not saying you couldn't do it like that now. It's just you probably wouldn't, and it's also a very white film.
And that's another thing. I mean, that we can't criticise that. That's the way the film is, and we can accept that.
And possibly you wouldn't have the parents with the very strong accents.
No.
If you did it, they'd have been played by. We'll say they were Norwegian. They'd have been played by Norwegian actors.
Yes. Yeah.
But this is all things that. There's nothing nasty in it. There's nothing. It's just how things were then. Yeah. And I would strongly say this film, it should be a U certificate. You wouldn't even have to slap one of them warnings on it because it's just a couple of little things that no one will watch that now and go, that's disgraceful.
No, exactly.
Whereas even in, I bought the recent Blu-ray re-release of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Yeah.
Still a PG. But there's a little warning on the beginning of it because they don't want to change the certificate, and there's a homophobic slur they use a few times in it.
Yeah, they have to do that. Yeah,
which I think is better than putting it up to a 12. You know?
Don't change history. Oh, say that. Don't change history. But don't change the film.
Just
to suit the demands now. At least say at the beginning this is subject to the period of time that it was made. You know, and that's a much better way of doing it.
The best one is I watched on Disney Plus, so I don't think I've ever seen it. The Leslie Nielsen Mr. Magoo film.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
So there's a warning at the beginning because obviously the joke is he can't see very well, so it's kind of getting at the visually impaired.
Yeah.
And then there's another warning at the end because it's from a fictional country, but they basically dress Jennifer Garner up to look Asian.
Right, yeah.
So it's like this PG kids film made only about 20 years ago is just so wrong now. And there should have been another warning on it because it's not very funny.
Yeah.
Just in general, not a very funny film. But yeah, I mean, it's I do always mention this in these films because it's not long off 40 years old. Next 2 years' time, it'll be a 40-year-old film, and I think it's aged well.
I do think it's aged well, and the scenes when I watched it again for the first time the other day for a long time, it was exactly as I remembered. It was exactly as I remembered, and I actually thought, I bet those effects are going to be really rubbish. But it wasn't trying to be overcooked anyway. It was just an overlay, you know, and like the way the bubble appeared, or the sphere as they called it. And I believed that it was there, and they were actually looking at. It was very. I thought it was very, very well done like that. And
the sort of practical effects of when it lands, and they've obviously done like a little explosion to make it look. It's fine. You know how they do it, but it looks good. Show that to a 10-year-old now, and they wouldn't criticise the effects.
No.
There's a bit when they're watching the film in the cinema as well. There's the bit what did make me laugh is the dating couple. One of them points to go, that looks so fake.
That looks so
but
fake,
it was the real ship.
Yeah.
And that's what made me think. Then will people be looking at this and go, it looks fake? I don't think so.
I didn't think it did. I mean, it's just as realistic as any of the others. I mean, any of the others at the time. It's. I
mean, it had to be said 25 million budget. That's a fair budget, I don't know what the likes of Back to the Future would have had, but
it didn't have as much as that. I don't think initially.
I
may have done.
I mean, with this as well, it was the first movie for Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix, child actors as well. So I imagine shooting might have been hard because of the hours doing it, but they wouldn't have had to pay them that much. There was no big lead in this. There was no Tom Cruise. There was no star.
No, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Ethan Hawke. I like a lot of his films. He's starred in a lot of Richard Linklater films, which I love.
Yeah.
As an adult actor, I love his films, and I just think he started so well in that, and he just continued it. I thought he was absolutely brilliant.
I mean, I was talking to someone about him the other day. It's like he started in this. Then he sort of done the sort of early 90s, almost teeny films.
Yes.
I remember him Reality Bites.
He was with Winona Ryder,
which was directed by Ben Stiller, interestingly enough.
I know he was in it, wasn't he? So he was okay. But
I know through the Linklater stuff before Sunrise and things like that, and he still kind of works with him. More recently, I mean, it's probably 10 years old now, but he done Boyhood.
I saw Boyhood. Yeah,
over years.
They actually did that over like 30 years or something
like that. Yeah, really interesting, really good film. I thought.
Yeah.
And then now he's having a sort of another comeback. Not that he ever went anywhere, but he's been in a few horror films. He's become this horror icon. He's done Sinister, which was a big hit. And last year, probably my favourite film of last year, if I'm honest, The Black Phone. Which I don't know if you've seen
I've not seen that one. I'll have to see it.
It's really good. Just come out on Blu-ray. Not that anyone who can listen to this, I've got there's a cover for you. I bought it because I really liked it, and his name's it's good to see his name above a title, which he's more known as a character actor now. But if you're into horror, check out The Black Phone. I really liked it. It got a big cinema release, and I predict there'll be another one. And that's set in the 70s. He's the villain in it. Really cool.
He was also in that. No, I want to watch this. He was also in that. What was the? Oh my goodness! I have to rely on the old grey matter. The one about election. The Purge, wasn't it?
The Purge.
Yes, he was in the Purge.
Yeah, he was in the first one of them, and.
I thought that was an excellent.
And that was probably before Sinister.
I think it
so. I knew
was,
there was another sort of horror-ish type because that's sort of an invasion horror. So I'd class it as a horror, but there's 3 different ones he's done there, and I mean he's got to be. Well, that film's nearly 40.
He's 52, I think. 52,
around
53,
50.
Yeah,
something like I'd guess at
1970, I believe he was.
Okay, So he's doing it all and still to.
I know he's still delivering, and Predestination's another one that I absolutely I love time travel sort of stuff anyway. But that one, that's kind of the sort of infinite loop sort of time travel. But anyway, we could do it another time. But he's done some fantastic films, and seeing him in that kind of makes me think, oh, there he is. There's the guy, you know, that is So it's nice to sort of see him having done that.
And you've got that. Basically, if you look, I hate to say it, but if you look at the leads in this, all where a child actor can go, one's gone on to be a pretty big star, still working. One we've unfortunately lost, and the other one, so two we've lost when you think about it, and the other one acted for a bit, looks like decided to do something else.
Well, wasn't it similar to the guy who did Flight of the Navigator? He but I don't know what
he acted for a bit, and he got himself in some trouble because he got arrested for bank robbery or something.
Oh, okay.
But 2 years ago, I met him at Comic-Con, and he was the nicest bloke. Yeah. And he genuinely, I don't know if you've been to any of these things.
No,
and
probably.
Some actors you can tell were just there for money. Which I'm guessing he would have been, but he loved it. He was spending time with everybody, talking about everything. There was a big queue for him, which was good to see. He had a little model, a little alien thing for it, and at most Comic-Cons you pay for your autograph and a little chat, and then if you want a picture, you pay and get a proper one done. He was just posing with everyone, selfies, enjoying himself. I think maybe he hit on hard times, realised, you know what, I can actually make a living out of this. I don't, and to enjoy talking about it for 34 years later. So some actors probably just get annoyed. It's like, what's his name? Is it? I keep something. Alan Dale, who was in Neighbours, who went on to Hollywood and is in several films, made them remove Neighbours from like his Wikipedia or something because he was sick of people asking him about it. Like, you was in it 20 years, mate. It made your career. Stop it.
I say you can't change history.
Yeah, it's I sometimes feel for these child actors. I mean, if you look at way Macaulay Culkin's career's gone, he seems to have come out of it okay, but he must find it hard to work now, but he's managed to make a career out of being in Home Alone.
Well, he's actually been doing the sort of just to touch on him for a minute. I mean, he's done some stuff. He was in American Horror Story, and he actually played a really good character in that. So he's choosing roles that he can do. I know he's not really a mainstream, but I think there's the door is always open if they wanted to sort of come back.
And the lad from 6th Sense and AI is having a bit of a comeback as well.
Yeah. What did I see him in? He was in this series on Netflix, I think, but I can't remember.
I saw him have I think it was What We Do in the Shadows he was in.
Right.
So that I might be wrong. But he does pop up because he's quite a big guy now.
He is.
Yeah, not as in taller.
No.
But he can act, and it's so difficult. I mean, for these young stars to pave a career after it. Some do it, some don't. Ethan Hawke seems to. I can't think of a better example of a child star who's gone on to. It might have actually helped him that at the time Explorers didn't do that well, so it wasn't
to drive him to move forward rather than be such a blockbuster. Yeah. So I guess just generally the film will always be like something that I will sort of just come back to. Certainly that the discovery of this sphere, with the that they sort of develop and then are able to travel around within this sphere, I think is a fascinating concept. And but one other thing, I don't know. I remember the spaceship that they put together looking exactly like a dog's head. And for some reason, when I watched it the other day, it didn't actually look like a dog's head. I was like, what? And then it changed that. I actually thought there was two eyes. There was a.
I didn't pick it, but I was reading there was like a different cut of it. But I think the cut. Did you watch it on Amazon Prime?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think the cut on Amazon Prime is the one you'd have seen as a kid.
Yeah.
The only difference in the alien, what appears right at the end, in the original cinema cut, made a joke about being in the cinema. The alien comes during the credits, and they obviously took that out because you're not in the cinema.
Yeah.
The same thing happened Gremlins 2, I believe.
Was it Gremlins 2? They had Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
But they cut that out. I'd never seen that scene.
I think it's on the Blu-ray. But if you are listening, I often say how you can get hold of the film. We both, I end up buying it, not renting it on Prime, because I knew I'd want to watch it again.
I actually bought it in the end, and it's not expensive. It's
about
just,
£6 or
it's
something.
about £6, but that's fine.
It hasn't currently got a DVD or Blu-ray release, but I think it's the sort of film that a company like Arrow will probably pick it up and there'll be a special edition.
I think so.
Dante was still looking for some of the footage, though he was until recently looking to the footage to use for something.
But I'd be interested in the backstory. You know, the extras that you get on all of those DVDs and stuff. The what his vision would have been at that time in his career, and what he could have done, and the fact that he had to cut it short. And I think the idea is such a fascinating concept, not necessarily ultimately original, but very good for what he's addressing at the time. And I would love to just see him be interviewed and just sort of say, what I was wanting to do with that was this.
That would be there's that sort of film that, I mean, he the movie done in '94, Matinee, which didn't do very well either. There's a special edition of that where there's all this, there's what happened, where it went wrong. So with this movie, I can see it happening one day. Yeah. And especially there'll always be interest in it because of the cast. Yeah. You know, River Phoenix is this iconic. You know, he's the Kurt Cobain of movies in a way. Yes. And then Ethan Hawke, who isn't your Tom Cruise or, you know, but he's a great character actor who's got a big fan base. Yeah. You know, so I think it will happen, and it should. There's, you know, when this came out, it must have been pushed on from the director of Gremlins. It must have been. And that would have been a brilliant selling point. So, and that's probably, they got him in for his name, and to add all those. Then there must be a reason they rushed it out. It's got to be. I don't know what came out the Christmas after that. Yeah, but it's.
I think it's the unpredictable sort of schedules of releases and competition at the time. Maybe I don't know. I can only guess. But it's a shame that had to be the case. But surely that's not really much different from what happens now. You know, something happens. And what you find these days as well is that when an idea comes to light for a film, there's usually something of the same style that comes out, but one of them does well and one of them doesn't. I mean, like the year that The Matrix came out, you also had 13th Floor, and the 13th Floor is actually an amazing book. I can't remember the author, but it's a Counterfeit World. It's fantastic, and 13th Floor is an amazing film, but it just got completely overshadowed by the magnificence of The Matrix, and sometimes that happens. Maybe they were trying to avoid something like that because they realised we're in a mid-80s. There's a rise in this interest of teen science fiction exploration films. That might have been the case. Who knows? I can only guess. I always think of like Deep Impact, Armageddon. Exactly. Exactly. He had Titanic. There was another Titanic that came out at the same time as well.
And when '91, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, there was another Robin Hood coming out at the same time.
Yes, there was.
And there was 3 in production at that point apparently. And according to the extras on Prince of Thieves, Kevin Costner was literally got to pick which one he wanted to be in because he wanted to play Robin Hood. He was his big name. I think he chose.
I think he done well. Yeah, I mean, I love that film. That's for me. That's classic.
So, well, we've been talking for 45 minutes.
Oh, we've gone over so many things.
What I'll ask you now is, what would you give this out of 5 when you were 11 and you first watched it, and then what would you give it out of 5 now?
Also, when I was 11, it's because I was still in the aftermath of having seen the likes of Flight of the Navigator. It probably would have been sort of 6.5, and then Flight of the Navigator 8. But I'm not to compare that.
Wow, 5.
I think, but no. I would say for the fact that it stood the test of time, it's a good 7. It's a good. I think
you're rating out of 10 then.
Yeah. No, out of 20. I don't know. I'm not very good at this rating thing. I mean, it depends on your mood, really. But I would say that it's having watched it again, I thought oh God, why am I doing this? It is not going to be the same. And it was exactly as I remember it being.
That's good.
And that, for me, if it's timeless like that, then it's a good job, right?
Yeah.
So,
and could you recommend another 2 or 3 movies from your youth that you reckon people would like, but maybe aren't the ones that they're not your go-tos, like, say, Back to the Future or Star Wars?
Oh, on the spot now, I can't think of any that kind of really jump out. I mean, I remember there was Daryl that came out in a similar time.
Yeah.
I wasn't too drawn with Daryl. I didn't really identify with that.
That was one I liked a lot more when I watched it as an adult than I did as a kid.
This is what I mean, because there's that. I think certainly in the 80s, we didn't really understand the AI sort of side of things. So I can't really think of any right now, but I'm probably kick myself after this and go, oh yeah, there's that one.
You can comment once I post.
I'll comment once you post, and then we'll have a look then. But no, I can't really at this moment. But
cool. Well, I'll just say, because I'll give it I rate out of 5 because it's simpler. For something I've never seen and it was aimed at kids.
Yes.
I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5 now. But for me, if I'd have seen this when I was young, it'd probably have been a 5-star. Because it's got everything. And if you go into it, a kid doesn't care what the reviews are. They don't care if it's ripped off something else or borrowed from something else. They go for it for enjoyment. And if anyone's listened to the earlier podcast we've done, a film I always refer to, and I speak to so many people who watched this film as a kid, but it bombed and considered one of the worst films ever, is Howard the Duck. Like, an 8-year-old loves that film.
Yeah.
Especially back then. They didn't understand how the film didn't work and how certain things were so unoriginal or just too stupid for the average critic or film goer. They liked the hour and a half of fun. And that's why I know I'd have loved this as a kid.
Yeah.
But I still liked it a lot as an adult.
Yeah.
So,
when you can consider what it would have been or might have been.
Oh yeah, I mean,
young,
if this film hadn't had all the mistakes, hadn't been rushed, maybe if the studio cared a bit more, it would be talked about in the way that just looking around. I don't want to keep referring to. It be remembered in a way that maybe the Goonies is.
Yeah, but I think also just to sort of wrap it up, I think now that you've got things like Stranger Things, you could watch like a version of that of Explorers in that sort of like that sort of acceptance of that genre now. I think it's I think it needs more recognition.
Yeah, definitely, and give it a go. If you've got Amazon Prime, you can rent or buy it. There will be second-hand copies of DVDs about. Not that we could find one.
No, I couldn't find any, but we did look.
There will be. I can find them at a price, but it's a Paramount film. It might even be on Paramount Plus now.
It might be on Paramount Plus. I don't have that.
I
checked all the other main.
Yeah, I
main
haven't
ones,
got that. So, but it's out there. You can get hold of it, and if you got kids, shout out to them. I'd be really interested.
Great Saturday afternoon film.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks very much, Ian, for joining me. It's been good. Hopefully we can do another one sometime.
Oh, I would love to. I'd love to. I hope that was informative.
Yeah, it flew by.
Yeah.
Anyone listening, if you have thoughts on this movie, comment on the Instagram or Facebook. I'm going to try this. I think you can actually comment straight through Spotify now. I think there's a way you can ask a question, which usually be people criticising, but do it, fine. But anything you want to ask, any comments on the film, and of course if there's any films you want to recommend, if I haven't seen it, I'll give it a go and we can come and have a chat about it. I've got some planned. Also, if you're not aware, I've been working on the King Street Cinema podcast as well for the great local cinema, independent cinema in Ipswich. Give that a go. There'll be an episode up towards the beginning of every month, usually focusing on our old movies, so you might like that as well. Thanks very much. Please rate the show and share if you liked it. Thank you very much.